I've been sharing my 100 days of mark making on Instagram, and everyone wants to know what pens and markers I'm using. Like this black ink that merges with the page and is waterproof once it dries, or the white gel pen that didn't clog once while drawing the patterns on this page, or the white brush pen that looks stunning on vellum. Hi, I'm Jackie Hernandez. I've been mark making on and off as a daily creative practice and art warm-up for years. I've filled hundreds of pages with marks, and I wrote an ebook called the Mark Making Starter Kit. In this video, I want to show you my must-have tools for mark making. I'll tell you what's worth getting if you're a beginner and what you can skip for now. This short list of supplies are the ones I have found the most reliable, have lasted the longest, and are a joy to use. Most of my recommendations are also permanent, light fast, and waterproof, which means your mark making will last forever and you can refer back to it for inspiration. I love looking back on my past mark making sketchbooks whenever I feel stuck. And you can use these same mark making tools in finished art without worrying about bleeding, discoloration, or fading. You can do mark making with any tools and media. Paint, watercolor, ink, and I encourage you to explore all of those, but it can get a little messy. And I think you need to be in the mood for that, or at least in the mood for the cleanup. So I'm gonna focus on my favorite clean mark making tools that require little cleanup and are easy to take with you anywhere. Mark making with pens and markers is an easy way to practice and develop your mark making style. Then you can easily translate marks that you've made with pens or markers to brush marks and other media once you find marks that you love. Someone is going to do the math and leave a comment about how much I've spent on these supplies. Please know that I've built up my collection of mark making supplies over a couple of years. I am not suggesting that you have to go out and buy all of these supplies to start mark making. But if you're frustrated with the pens and markers you currently have, I want to share some tools that I really love that you may want to add to your mark making toolkit. My number one recommendation, the pens that I started with and still use today, were only $16. They've lasted me years. Okay, let me demo each of these supplies and show you some mark making examples I've made with each tool. My number one mark making tool, like if I was stranded alone on an island, I would want these with me, is this set of black pens. These are the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens. I have these 2 sets of 8. These are the same pens I recommended in my 2024 How to Start Mark Making video, and they are still my top choice for mark making. I love these pens because the variety of the nibs is amazing. In each of these sets, you get 8 different nibs. A few of my personal favorites are the brush nib, the soft brush nib, the soft chisel, and the Fude hard nib. But these are all the different nibs that I've swatched out here in these 2 different sets. These pens are Black India ink, which is a pigment ink. It is light, fast, waterproof, permanent, odorless, acid-free, pH neutral. And it does say here that it does not bleed through paper. That depends on the paper. It definitely will bleed through on thinner papers, but on normal paper, it's pretty good. The other thing that I love about these pens is that it's the same ink in all of these different pens. So you can use different pens on the same design and still have a consistent look. You can see in one of my original mark making sketchbooks where I was using random different pens and all the blacks are different. And the pages just don't look very consistent, compared to when I switched to using just the Artist Pitt pens with the Black India ink, and the look across the page is a lot more consistent, even though I used a whole variety of different pens. And these pens do work over different media, including acrylic paint. Just keep in mind that the ink is not opaque, so you can see a little bit of the background through the ink. For beginners, I recommend starting with this specific set. It has the greatest variety of nibs. There are some duplicates in this other set and only a few new unique nibs. If you can only get one thing in this entire video, make it this set of pens. I use these exclusively for my first year of mark making, and I'm still using the same set. They haven't run out of ink yet. I have a few of my favorites that are starting to run out of ink. Both of these sets are linked in my Amazon storefront. Look for the link in the video description below. Until recently, I did most of my mark making in black and white. For my 100-day project, I wanted to explore colorful mark making, both making colorful marks and layering marks over colorful backgrounds. For that, I'm using acrylic markers. I have a love-hate relationship with acrylic markers. Like, I love all the color, but I hate shaking and pumping markers. I also think the finish of acrylic markers is kind of rough. But acrylic markers are the best option for layering over other colors because they're pretty opaque. So you can even layer lighter colors over dark. You can also layer one marker color over another without them mixing if that first layer is dry. I started out using a limited set of Posca markers. I have just the 12 basic colors in 3 different sizes. These are the 0.7 that have the plastic nib, and then I have 2 different sizes of bullet nibs. I don't think you can go wrong with Posca as far as quality, but they aren't the most affordable option. To expand my color range, I recently purchased this set of Ohuhu acrylic paint markers. This set has 48 markers, but it's only 24 different colors. There is a small and a large marker for each color. The small markers have a fine tip plastic nib like the 0.7 millimeter Poscas, and the larger markers have a bullet nib that can actually be flipped around for a chisel nib. These markers came in this really nice case to keep all of the colors organized. The reason I picked this set of Ohuhu markers was the 3 different nib types. I love the fine tip nibs, and I also like the bullet nibs. I was disappointed with the chisel nib. First, you have to flip around the bullet nib in each marker, which is messy, and I don't see myself doing that very often. And I could never get the chisel side fully activated with paint or to write evenly on the paper. So I was hoping the chisel would make nice square marks, but they just don't, and I don't see myself flipping around the bullet nibs all the time to use the chisel nibs. I have quickly learned in my scrappy art journals that acrylic markers, whether they're Posca or a less expensive brand, are not great on all papers like newsprint, rice paper, and some vintage book pages. The tips stop more often and pick up some of the paper fibers. The acrylic markers can also bleed through thinner papers. To get the best results from acrylic markers, you need to shake your acrylic markers before using them, and anytime you feel that the color is coming out weaker or less opaque. You also need to activate the tip by pumping it a few times on a piece of scrap paper. Always use scrap paper because sometimes a whole blob of paint will come out. That happens more often with my Poscas than the Ohuhu markers. If you're a mark making beginner and you don't already have acrylic markers, I wouldn't rush out to buy any. I recommend beginners start with black ink on white paper. It is the best way to explore shapes and patterns without being distracted by color, and it's what I teach in the mark making starter kit. If you've been mark making for a while and want to start exploring color, then I think acrylic markers are worth trying. I would caution against getting those huge sets with 60 to 90 colors. Oftentimes there are lots of colors that are very similar to each other, or there's lots of pale and light colors that aren't useful for mark making. I think it's more important to choose a set that has colors you love, which includes analogous shades. I love to create gradients in my mark making, which I do using 3 to 4 analogous colors that sit next to each other on the color wheel. This Ohuhu set has a few good trios of analogous colors. There are 2 colors in this set that completely surprised me, and I don't think I could live without them now. This first one is like coloring with craft paper. I don't know why they call this color apricot. And this other one is called light orange, but I would have called it vintage book page. It is the perfect peachy color to match some vintage book pages. On this page, I used it to make dots at the end to bring back some of the book page color after I did all these layers of blue and green. Acrylic markers also come in black, white, and metallics, but I have other tools that I prefer for those. For black, I prefer the Pitt Artist pens with the black India ink, which sinks into the paper instead of sitting on top like acrylic marker does. Now, I want to get to white mark making tools because I have a few to share with you, but first let me show you my favorite tools for metallic mark making. I am partial to gold, but you can use silver or any other metallic color you like. There are a lot of metallic pen options, but I think the quality and coverage varies. I have 2 gold recommendations that I love for mark making. First is the Uniball Signo Gold Gel Pen. This is much creamier than the white Signo gel pen. It never clogs and the ink flows freely. The one thing to know about this ink is it's not a sparkly, shiny gold. It dries to a more matte gold sheen. But because it's so nice to use, I find myself reaching for these pens all the time. My second recommendation is this Kuretake Gold Mica ink. It's not exactly a mess-free option, but I can't give you a gold recommendation without telling you about this ink. You can't get something like this in a pen. It is the shiniest, most gorgeous warm gold color. And there's lots of ways to apply it too. You can use a paintbrush, but for easier cleanup and detailed mark making, I like to use a dip pen or ruling pens like this. You can also use this ink for stenciling and stamping. On this page, I used a Nerf bullet to stamp the ink. If you're a beginner, I recommend starting with the Signo Gold gel pens and seeing if you like adding metallic accents to your work. If you already know you love gold, then it's worth getting the Kuretake Gold Mica ink and exploring the different ways you can use it for mark making. For white mark making, I can't live without white gel pens, but I also have 2 other new white mark making tools I want to share with you after I show you the gel pens. I used to recommend Uniball Signo white gel pens as my top choice because I think it is the most opaque white gel pen. And when it writes well, it's a dream. Unfortunately, the white Signos clog and skip often, and I'm constantly scribbling and fighting with this pen on scratch paper trying to revive it. The scrappy art journals I'm mark making in for my 100-day project also have a lot of gel printed pages coated with acrylic paint. And the Signo Uniball is not great over acrylic paint. I feel like it skips even more than usual. I have a tip to avoid clogging with white gel pens, but first, let me show you my new favorite white gel pen. This is my go-to for my 100-day project. Look at these beautiful empty barrels because I am getting every last bit of ink out of these pens because they're not clogging on me. These are the Sakura Jelly Roll white gel pens in size 10. I don't know if the Jelly Roll ink is quite as opaque as the Signo, but the Jelly Roll is so much more reliable. I can do an entire page of marks without the pen clogging. So I'm spending more time mark making and less time cleaning pen tips. If you're a mark making beginner, I recommend the Jelly Roll pens for frustration-free white doodling. No matter what white gel pen you're using, my top tip to prevent clogging and skipping is to press lightly. Just barely touch the tip of the pen to the paper and let it glide across. White gel pens have a roller ball in the tip, and if you press really hard, you are preventing that ball from moving and the ink will dry up on the tip and stop flowing. I love mark making with white gel pens, but they are a monoline tool and they're not that great for filling in shapes. White gel pens are best for line work and dots. If you want to make larger white marks or fill in shapes, then you can use a white acrylic marker or a white brush pen. This white brush pen is one of my newest supplies and I wish I had tried it sooner. This is the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pen in white. It's the same type of pen as the black Pitt Artist Pen. I actually have this lettering set that has 4 different nib types with white ink. I wanted to try these because of the different nibs. I do think this package is a little misleading because these pens are not this opaque. These are filled with white India ink, which is light fast, permanent, and waterproof once it dries. I was initially disappointed because they are not very opaque. You can see how they kind of sink in on the black paper. But I discovered I really like the chalky look of these on some backgrounds. They work beautifully on vellum and craft paper. I think the key with these is to use them on mid-tone backgrounds, which creates enough contrast with the white ink. If the background is too light, the ink won't show, and if it's too dark, the lack of opacity becomes noticeable. This ink is also buildable, so you can go back over your marks to make them more opaque. But unlike acrylic markers, which I don't think most of them have a very opaque white either, these pens do not need to be activated or shaken, which makes them a joy to use. The ink flow is just consistent right out of the pen. Now, some of these are better than others. The brush tip is a standout. I love the line quality of this pen. It's really fun to doodle with. You can get thin lines or thicker lines by using the pen on its side. There are 2 different bullet tips in this set and both work well. This one is a 1.5 bullet tip, just kind of a standard bullet tip size. This big bullet pen has a huge barrel and you can get thin lines if you write with it on the tip and thicker lines if you hold it lower on the side. I do find this giant barrel really awkward to hold on to, especially at that low angle. I think I would have preferred a big chisel nib instead of this larger bullet nib. The last one here is the calligraphy nib, which I found to be the least opaque, which is really disappointing. I thought I would be able to use it more like a chisel tip to make square marks, but it just doesn't put out enough ink. In the future, I will definitely repurchase the brush pen and probably the smaller bullet tip. If you're a mark making beginner, I would recommend starting with the brush tip, which I think is the most versatile. Another new white mark making tool I am loving is this white China marker or grease pencil. These are waxy and super smooth to write with. The white does show up over darker colors, but it looks like chalk. These are water resistant too, which is great if you want to layer over top of them without smudging. But it also means you can use them as a resist. Here, I made some marks and scribbles with the white China marker and then covered the page with ink. The China marker resists the ink. I am really excited to explore what else I can do with these. Now that you know what tools are best for mark making, watch my video on 3 easy mark making patterns to get started.